Yeah, nodding. Okay, great. Well, hello everyone. So I'm going to talk to you for the next sort of 10 minutes. When I was putting this together, it's so hard to know what to fit into 10 minutes, and especially as I've been sort of approaching this topic from two different angles. I decided that I was going to sort of start with a bit of a story of how I became sort of interested in the decolonizing field research. So in 2012, I started a PhD that was looking at streams and rivers in Brunei in northern Borneo. And this story kind of shows how things have changed in a relatively short period of time, but also how we still have a lot to do. So in 2012, I started my field research in Brunei. I was going to be looking at bugs and insects that live on the river floor. And so when I was filling out all the permits, health and safety forms and stuff, there was no requirement for ethics because I wasn't talking with local people. In the design of my PhD, it was very much seen as a kind of theoretical PhD with a focus on the ecology. And so therefore there was no real need to talk with local people. And so I went off, I went to Brunei multiple times, did field research. There's a couple of photos. The top one, I'm with a master's student and a PhD student who was also doing some work in the rainforest. And the bottom photo there is I'm working with one of the boatmen who helped me do my field work. And in the design of me doing research out there, it was right from the beginning, I was working with researchers at the university, and it was all, everything I published, their names would be on. However, fast forward a couple of years, I finished my PhD, I moved to the University of Exeter, and I started getting into some conversations with cultural geographers about field research, and it just made me start asking questions to myself, and whether the way that my PhD was conducted and how things could have been improved. And I started having conversations with Mark Griffiths, who was my friend doing my PhD, and he was a cultural geographer. And we started having all these conversations about how things, when you start questioning things like, wow, why did I do it in that way? And why was it, why should the university researchers in Brunei have the name on the paper, but not the people that helped me actually do the logistics and the people that were with me daily? And why did I not talk with the people that live in Brunei? I was working with Indigenous communities. They helped me do my PhD. However, there was no real dialogue about the streams and rivers that they know way better than I do. And so I kind of went through this sort of crisis of just like questioning everything. And I was talking to Mark, and we put together this commentary about decolonizing field ecology. And it's only a commentary, and it's only very sort of listing things that we were talking about, and it's barely scratching the surface. But I just thought I would start with that, of why I became kind of interested in this subject. And as Ariel said it in the introduction, I now work on international research projects, one of which is called Lotus, where we're working with Indian partners. And so I've also now got the experience of working on these international research projects more as a community manager rather than a researcher. I'm just flagging a few things. So I've only got 10 minutes, but I just wanted to flag up, following on the theme of field research, is some of Anne Toomey's work, who I'm a big fan of, and she's this diagram here shows the in figure A, it shows the kind of traditional old school way of doing science. So science is very much separate from the society and the decision making and the local values. and you have the problems, and then the solutions are fed back. And in this paper that she wrote in the conservation letter, she's talking about spaces and talking about how, you know, actually it's all as one, and you have these spaces between local knowledge, between the science and the decision makers, and how you know, we should be using those spaces, and instead there, you know, there's big gaps. And she also has written some a paper that was, well, she was going to write a paper, but then after talking with the field researchers where she was doing her work, she found out that, you know, writing a paper or a document isn't the best way to communicate. And in fact, other forms such as creating videos is a more positive way. And I've just screenshot a video that she put together that's all about Indigenous perspectives on research. So I'd really recommend you guys having a listen to that. It's only about 7 minutes long. But a lot of Tumi's work really sort of resonated with some of the things I'm thinking about with when I was reflecting on my field research. So these are just a few thoughts that came to mind when I was sort of preparing for this presentation, and it's a bit of a brain dump, so sorry about that. But so I think with this, it's thinking about that whole thing of spheres of influence. There are some things that you can tangibly act on now, and as a community manager are certainly in your sphere of influence. And there are other things that are incredibly frustrating because they're not in your sphere of influence. And so then I guess it's more sort of raising awareness of how more structural things have to change in order for there to be proper change. It's not a good sentence. So just to kind of rattle through this list. Communication. So this was, I put this down because of the project I work on, this international research project in India. We started, so this is an international research project linking multiple European countries and different regions in India. It's a huge project, something like 30 plus partners. It's a real beast of a project. And how do you communicate across different time zones? And to begin with, we thought, oh, Zoom, we'll use Zoom or Teams, that's great. But actually, WhatsApp is fantastic. It's understanding what platforms that you're, you know, whatever country you're working in, what works for everyone. And an interesting thing about scheduling meetings and understanding different like perceptions of time. So in the UK, it seems to be that we quite like scheduling meetings quite far in advance, whereas what we found is working a little bit on the fly works better. Meetings as a community manager, we really do have the power in curating meetings, looking at the structures and designing them to make sure all voices are heard. And in terms of conferences, it has been amazing during this COVID time that it is it's enabled like the accessibility of people to attend conferences that perhaps people might not have been able to attend. However, of course, having access to the internet can be a barrier to some people. But thinking about where connections are made, it's often at a conference, and a lot of conferences are held in Western countries, and the whole visa issue in getting into those countries can be a real barrier. So it's thinking about that and thinking about funding, perhaps to ensure that people who might not be able to afford to attend those conferences, there are ways to support those people. Then in terms of dissemination, so thinking about new authorship models. So in academia, we kind of get obsessed by first author and last author. And there's a Professor Pennington, who's at the University of Exeter, who is awesome. And he's been working in lots of South American countries, and he's just avoided the whole lead authorship thing by using the research group name instead. So this is a picture of him and his research group called Dry Floor Network. And so that's what he puts as the first author. That's what he puts instead of having the first author. And it's also thinking about including everyone who's involved in that research. It's not just the academics that you're working with in that in the host country. It's also the people that are helping you day to day who are collecting the data. And then in terms of dissemination, you've got to think about paywalls and language barriers. That video that I shared on the previous screen that Tumi put together, they were talking about how they had to pay to access information that was about their land and that they helped the researcher. And it was behind a paywall, and it was in a different language as well. So you'd have to pay someone to translate it as well, which is just mad. Also thinking about ways to disseminate workshops and community meetings and putting together videos as well are far better than just writing a peer review publication. And then the last thing I was just noting down was about collaboration and collaborating with communities during the design phase of the project to help build trust and understanding what communities are interested in and what challenges they are facing. But this is where the frustrating bit comes in, because often when you're applying for funding to do research, funders want to know exactly what you're going to do and when, and often you don't have this seed funding to go out to build relationships. And the other thing is, and this has actually happened, so I'm Skyping in from the southwest, and there's a town just outside of Exeter that's a new town called Cranbrook, and researchers have got involved in that community, and so they've kind of been over-researched, and they're just fed up of researchers coming in, and they feel like they're in Big Brother. And so you've really got to think as researchers, you know, what is the community getting from this? It can't be this one way format anymore. It has to be like Tumi was showing in her diagram. So yeah. And then I just wanted to sort of end it on something kind of positive. I'd say things are beginning to change, although we've got a really long way to go. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, so my PhD was in physical geography, and back in 2012, if you spoke about decolonizing field research, you probably would have got a lot of eye rolls from physical geographers. And today, you know, physical geographers are really open, and ecologists, to working out how they can change, and this sort of light bulb moment that, you know, wow, what we've been doing is, you know, not the right way. This is a colleague of mine, Tom Rowland, and this is the tweet he put out this term about talking to undergrads about the production of physical geography, and it was really well received with the students. And I think it's sort of communicating and being open with what everyone's doing, so we can kind of all learn from each other. Just one quote I wanted to include before I finish, though, is that, again, maybe this is out of our sphere of influence at the moment, but it's making sure, you know, we can talk about all of this and we can have these ideas, but without Indigenous and non-white people being at the centre of it and being on boards and being, you know, editors, and, you know, things are not going to change. And so although things are moving in a good direction, I think there's still a lot to go, a lot further to go. But yeah, thanks very much. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the discussions we're going to have today and the other two speakers. Thank you.